Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the world of Swami Krishnananda. He was a prominent figure in the lineage of Swami Sivananda. And the source that you shared with me is an article from the Spiritual Sikh, and it's called The Things We Carry With Us.
Yeah, that's a great title. It really encapsulates a lot of what Krishnananda is talking about.
Yeah.
He's really inviting us to consider not just the physical things, but also all the deeper and often invisible things that we carry with us that shape our lives.
So what exactly is he referring to when he talks about this invisible baggage?
Well, right from the start, Krishnananda emphasizes that wherever we go, we're carrying our mental and emotional states with us.
Right.
You know, our memories and loves and hatreds and anxieties.
Right.
All these things are part of this invisible luggage that we can't just leave behind.
So he's saying even if we physically move to a new location or change our external environment, we can't escape our inner world.
Exactly. He uses a really powerful analogy of trying to leave your sorrows in the jungle.
Okay.
And he points out that just as our joys will accompany us wherever we go, so will our sorrows. They're a part of us.
This is a really great point because I think it highlights how much of our experience is shaped by our inner state, not just what's happening around us, but how we're interpreting and reacting to it.
Exactly. And that leads him to another really important piece of this invisible luggage.
Okay.
This web of human society that we're all a part of.
Yeah.
And Krishnananda argues that we are inherently social beings.
Right.
You know, we're reliant on others in countless ways.
So it's not just about our emotional baggage, but our social connections as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
How does he develop that idea?
Well, he paints this really vivid picture of how interconnected we all are. You know, you think about your morning coffee.
Right.
It relies on this global network of farmers who grew the beans and the shippers who transported them and the baristas who prepared the drink.
Yeah.
And Krishnananda points out that this web of interdependence, it extends to every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying our well-being is inextricably tied to the well-being of the entire social fabric.
Right. He argues that we depend on others for our security and for our sustenance and for our sense of belonging.
Right.
And this dependence goes beyond just our immediate needs.
Okay.
He even points out that international relations, something that might seem very distant from our daily lives, can actually have a profound impact on our sense of safety and security.
So even events on the global stage can affect our personal well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's really challenging the notion that we can simply isolate ourselves from the world's problem. He's saying we're all part of this total business, as he puts it, a global family whose fates are intertwined.
And this leads to the next layer of Krishnananda's argument.
Yeah.
Our relationship with nature.
Right. So now he shifts the focus to the natural world.
Okay.
And he highlights the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether.
Right.
And he emphasizes how these elements, they sustain our very existence.
One thing I found interesting is that he calls these elements divinities.
Yeah.
What do you think he means by that?
Well, I think he's using that term to emphasize the power.
Right.
And the importance of these elements.
Okay.
You know, I don't think he's suggesting that they're literal gods,
Right.
but rather that they are forces that deserve our reverence and respect.
Okay.
And he's really challenging this modern tendency to see ourselves as separate from or even superior to nature.
Right, right. So instead of viewing ourselves as masters of the natural world, he's encouraging us to see ourselves more as participants.
Exactly.
Deeply intertwined with these elements.
Yeah. He reminds us that we're utterly dependent on nature's bounty.
Yeah.
We can't manufacture clean air.
Right.
We can't make the sun rise.
And he uses that example of putting your foot on the ground.
Right.
Like even that simple act should be done with an awareness of the earth's support and a sense of gratitude for its stability.
Yeah.
I thought that was a powerful image.
It's a call to cultivate a sense of reverence for the natural world.
Right.
To recognize that we are not separate from it, but rather that we are deeply embedded in it.
Yeah, he goes on to highlight how all these elements cooperate to provide for us. The sun and the oceans, the wind, they all work together to create rain, which gives us the water we need to survive.
And then he contrasts this with like man-made commodities, which always come with a price tag. He's pointing out that we don't have to pay for air and water and sunlight.
Right.
These are gifts from nature, freely giving.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a subtle but powerful reminder of the inherent value and generosity of the natural world.
Right.
And then Krishnananda brings in another element to this idea of invisible luggage.
Yeah.
Carrying God.
Right. Now, his teaching takes on a distinctly spiritual dimension.
And he acknowledges that this might be a difficult concept to grasp.
Yeah.
But he argues that we're carrying God with us at all times. And this presence, he says, is even more profound than our connection to society or nature.
Krishnananda is pointing towards an experience of interconnectedness
Okay.
that transcends our usual understanding of self and other.
Right.
He's suggesting that there's a deeper reality that underlies all of existence.
And he doesn't explicitly define what he means by God in this context.
Right.
But what do you think we can infer from his words?
Well, it seems to encompass a sense of a larger unifying force that permeates all of existence, a source of strength and guidance.
Right.
That's always available to us.
So even when we feel alone or lost, he's saying we're not truly alone.
Right.
Because we're carrying this divine presence within us.
Exactly. He emphasizes that we're perpetually under the protection and the guardianship of this divine presence.
I find that a very reassuring thought.
And he even connects this back to our senses.
Okay.
Suggesting that our ability to see and hear and feel is ultimately a result of this divine operation.
So he's saying that every aspect of our being, from our physical senses to our social connections, is ultimately rooted in this divine interconnectedness.
Yeah. And then this leads him to explore the idea of death and what happens when we depart from this physical body.
Right.
And he uses this analogy of ambassadors fleeing a country during an emergency.
Okay.
And he says when death approaches, these divinities, these ambassadors of God, withdraw from our system.
And that's why, as we approach death, our senses start to fail.
Yeah.
We can no longer see or hear or think clearly.
Right.
Because those divine forces are withdrawing.
That's how he explains it. He describes it as a very serious situation that none of us can escape.
Okay.
And he talks about a little flame that emerges from the heart at the moment of death. And this flame, he compares it to the soul, carries the essence of our experiences and our desires from this life.
And this determines where we go after death.
That's Krishnananda's suggestion.
Based on the nature of our desires.
Yeah. He even makes this point that if we've lived like a pig in this world, we can't expect to become an angel in the next.
Yeah, it's a call to really examine our actions and intentions in this life. Because they have consequences.
He's not advocating for like a life of austere asceticism or anything.
Right.
But rather for cultivating thoughts and desires that are aligned with our aspirations for spiritual growth.
This brings us back to this idea of spirituality.
Yeah.
What does Krishnananda say about that?
Well, he says that true spirituality isn't about rituals or external practices, but about dedicating ourselves to the cosmic structure created by God. He's calling for a deeper understanding of spirituality. That goes beyond superficial actions and embraces a profound connection with this divine force that permeates all of existence.
So true spirituality is about aligning ourselves with this larger reality, recognizing the interconnectedness of all things, and living in accordance with that understanding.
Yeah, that's a great summation. And he challenges us to ask some tough questions. You know, what kind of desires are we cultivating? Are we spending our time wisely? Pursuing goals that are truly meaningful?
He's suggesting we often waste our time on trivial matters and forget about the ultimate purpose of our existence.
It's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
To prioritize our spiritual growth.
Right.
To strive to connect with that divine essence that resides within us and all around us.
That brings up a good question for you, the listener.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most significant piece of invisible luggage that Krishnananda has highlighted?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And how might recognizing these unseen forces change the way you approach your own life and your interactions with the world?
You know, it's interesting how Krishnananda weaves together all these different levels of existence, you know, the individual and the social, the natural and the divine.
Right.
And he doesn't present them as separate, but rather as all these interconnected layers of reality.
It sounds like he's saying we can't really understand ourselves without understanding this larger context that we're part of.
That's right. And that has real implications for how we approach life.
Right.
If we're always just focused on individual needs and desires, we miss the richness of all these other connections.
Yeah, he seems to be making a case for expanding our awareness beyond ourselves.
Right.
To include society, to include nature, to include this divine presence in everything.
And he suggests that awareness is what true spirituality is about.
Okay.
It's not about escaping from the world, but about engaging with it in a more conscious and compassionate way.
He uses that analogy of putting your foot on the ground and recognizing the divinity of the earth that's supporting you.
Right.
It's a good reminder to find the sacred in the everyday, in the things we take for granted.
That's a key point. Spirituality isn't separate from daily life for Krishnananda.
Right.
It's about infusing everyday actions with awareness and intention.
Right.
Recognizing that interconnectedness.
He even talks about prostrating before everything we see, from a tree to a donkey.
Right, right. He's using that as a metaphor, of course. You know, it's about cultivating humility and recognizing the inherent worth of all beings.
Right.
Letting go of our sense of superiority and embracing this more interconnected view.
He's challenging us to see the world through a different lens.
Yeah.
To find that divine spark.
Right.
Everywhere.
And he suggests that that shift in perspective can change not just our inner experience, but also our actions. Right. You know, if we truly believe that everything is worthy of respect, we're more likely to treat others in the natural world with kindness.
It sounds like he's linking spirituality to ethical behavior, saying true spirituality should lead to a more compassionate and responsible way of living.
And that makes his message especially relevant today.
Right.
You know, we need this expansive awareness now more than ever.
Yeah.
Krishnananda's teachings offer a really powerful antidote to the self-centeredness and the short-sightedness that cause so many of the problems that we face as a global society.
Yeah, he's reminding us we're not isolated individuals competing for resources, but interconnected beings sharing this planet and depending on each other for our well-being.
And our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the whole web of life, including future generations.
As we unpack this idea of invisible luggage, I'm struck by how much responsibility Krishnananda seems to be placing on us.
It's not a burden, though.
Okay.
You know, think of it as an invitation.
Right.
An invitation to step into our full potential as human beings.
To recognize our power, to create a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world.
He reminds us we have a choice.
Right.
We can live in ignorance and self-absorption, or we can awaken to these deeper truths.
Right.
And live in alignment with them.
It's a call to awaken to that divine spark within ourselves and all beings, and to let that awareness guide our actions.
That brings us to maybe the most challenging part of his message.
Yeah.
This idea of carrying God with us at all times.
Yeah, he does acknowledge that it's a difficult concept to grasp.
You know, it's not something that we can just understand intellectually. It's an experience or realization that comes through introspection and spiritual practice.
He's pointing towards a state of consciousness.
Yeah.
Where we transcend the boundaries of ourselves and merge with the infinite.
And he suggests that this connection is always there, even if we're not aware of it.
Like the air we breathe.
Exactly.
Always there, sustaining us.
Yeah.
Even if we don't think about it.
And he implies that by cultivating our awareness of this presence, we can tap into a source of strength, wisdom, and guidance.
And he doesn't give, like, specific methods for achieving this realization. But he does suggest that it requires a certain level of inner stillness and focus.
Our thoughts and desires, he says, can distract us from this connection, or they can help us to cultivate it.
So it's about aligning our inner world with this larger reality.
And he suggests that that alignment is how we experience true peace and fulfillment.
So I want to continue exploring Krishnananda's teachings.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear from you, the listener, what resonates most with you about this idea of carrying God.
Yeah, that's a great question.
And how might this awareness, if cultivated, influence your own life journey?
These are important questions to consider as we go further into the depths of Krishnananda's wisdom.
It's fascinating how Krishnananda connects these ideas of inner transformation to our actions in the world. He's not just talking about personal enlightenment. He's calling for a more compassionate and responsible way of living.
Right. He seems to be saying that true spirituality can't be separated from our ethical responsibilities. If we truly recognize our interconnectedness with all beings, then our actions should reflect that understanding.
So it's not just about cultivating inner peace, but also about extending that peace outward into our interactions with the world.
Exactly. And this is where his teachings become particularly relevant, I think, to the challenges that we face today. In a world that's grappling with environmental crises and social divisions and political conflicts, this call for interconnectedness and compassion feels incredibly timely.
He's offering an alternative to the self-centeredness and short-sightedness that often contribute to these problems.
He reminds us that we're not isolated individuals competing for resources, but rather interdependent beings sharing a common destiny.
And that our choices have consequences not just for ourselves, but for the entire web of life, including future generations.
He doesn't shy away from the weight of that responsibility.
Right.
In fact, he seems to be suggesting that taking on this responsibility is part of what it means to be fully human.
He's urging us to move beyond a narrow, ego-driven perspective and embrace a wider view that encompasses the well-being of all.
It's a challenging invitation, but also an inspiring one. He's pointing towards a path of liberation not just from personal suffering, but from the limitations of a worldview that separates us from each other and from the natural world.
And this brings us back to the idea of carrying God. What are the practical implications of that concept? How does it translate into everyday life?
That's a great question. Krishnananda suggests that this awareness of the divine presence within us can be a source of strength and guidance, helping us to navigate the inevitable challenges of life with a sense of equanimity and purpose.
So even when we face difficult situations, he's saying we can tap into this inner resource to find courage, wisdom, and compassion.
That's the implication. It's not about denying the reality of suffering or hardship, but rather about approaching those experiences with a different mindset, a deeper understanding of our interconnectedness with all things.
He's offering a spiritual framework for facing life's inevitable ups and downs, a way to move through those experiences with more grace and resilience.
And he's reminding us that we're not alone in this journey. This sense of carrying God is a reminder that we're always connected to something greater than ourselves. A source of love, wisdom, and support that's always available.
This has been a really profound exploration of Swami Krishnananda's teachings. His words offer a really powerful invitation to awaken to a deeper reality, to recognize our interconnectedness with all beings, and to live in alignment with that understanding.
He's challenging us to embrace our full potential as human beings, to move beyond fear and separation, and to contribute to the creation of a more just, compassionate, and sustainable world.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we invite you, the listener, to reflect on this question. How can you cultivate a greater awareness of this invisible luggage, the inner states, the social bonds, the connection to nature, and the divine presence in your own life?
And how might that awareness shift your perspective, your choices, and your interactions with the world around you?
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of Swami Krishnananda's wisdom.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep diving deep.